The Pérez Destroyer is a wet fly that should not be missed. After seeing it on Old Smuggler Fly Fishing's channel, I had to steal it for myself. And now we're gonna tie it up. So grab a cup of chill as we sit back and go on the Vise with the FlyOlderGuy. And on the Vise, we're gonna start with a size 14 wet fly hook. Get it situated in there nicely. On Old Smuggler's channel, when he tied this up, he used a size 16 lightning strike. And that tends to be a little bit longer, so I'm going with a size 14 here. And on the bobbin, we're going to load it up with a little bit of the UTC 140 in brown. This thicker thread is going to help us build up the body, because really the body of this fly is all thread. So we're going to put down a nice base here, all the way back to the bend. I'm going to leave the thread there for a second, just trim off that extremely long tag that I've got there. Trim that out. And now I'm going to build up a little bit more of a thread base here. Whoop, watch it there. That'll happen sometimes, you know. And this thicker thread, it's all right. You can escape with a couple of near misses with that hook point. So one nice coating up and back on that hook shank. And we're going to grab some lead-free wire. Now, the reason I put this bit of a thread base, which differs from Old Smuggler's version, is so that this wire doesn't slide around quite so much. Because what you want to do here is, 4, maybe 5 nice twists, depending how much you got. I think we can go one more twist there. I'm going to get a nice size little wire there, a little bit of wire to add weight and also to help with the taper. And you'll see me just here manipulating the tag ends a little bit, making sure they're tucked in and down, and also leaving space behind the hook eye, because we need to leave some space behind the hook eye, which is why I have that thread base to help keep this little bit of wire from slipping. You can see me just checking it, making sure it doesn't move around as I build the thread up to the front, and then start to kind of lock in that wire in place, making a nice little thorax ahead of time too. So we're going to kind of build the taper up to that thorax with this thread eventually. You can see it's nicely covered, and we're going to build the thread back right to that bend. And then at that bend is where I'm going to build up a little bit of like a thread ball. And this is one of the tricks I'll do most of the time when I'm adding on tailing material, so that the tailing material will stand upright and kind of get separated as you tie it in and tie it back towards this little ball of thread that we have there right at the bend. It's looking good. It's got a little bit of height to it, but nothing crazy. Just a little bit of like a thread ball. So for the tailing material, we're going to use some pheasant tail. And I like to use quite a few strands here. I'm grabbing 6 maybe. It's like at least 6 strands. And then kind of let it fan out a little bit, right? Just like that. I'm going to fan it out. Come in, measure it. I'm talking about 1 shank length, just about. And switch hands, do a little pinch wrap just to get it in place. And again, right at the base of that little thread ball we made. And as I tie it back more towards the thread ball, you can see they'll splay out a little bit, and these pheasant tail fibers will stand upright. So we've got that locked in. Pull up the butt ends and trim them out. Then we'll just go back over the butt ends a little bit, cover them up, and continue to build up the body with this thread. And again, this is a thicker thread, so we're going to get a nice coverage here on the body with the thread. Going to leave the bobbin right there by the hook point, and we're tying in my favorite material now. This is the metallic Madeira flash material. And we're going to use this as a ribbing material, Old Smuggler. Use some yellow thread, and you know me, I like my metallic Madeira. Really, it's just because, again, I thought I ordered one roll and I got a box of 5 rolls of it, so we use it as much as we can on this channel. But it works. It really is a nice little flash material. So I've locked that in place with a pinch wrap, and I'm just going to trim that out, and again, going to just cover up the butt ends of that and continue to build up this little thread body. And you can see how this taper is now smooth right up to where we want that thorax to be. So I'm going to go back a little bit more, and again locking in the Madeira and kind of pulling on those tailing materials. And you can, it's a great little trick with that little ball at the back by the tail. So body's looking good. We'll go up towards the thorax, and then gonna put the bobbin in the bobbin cradle, and then we're gonna wrap our Madeira material for the ribbing. Nice evenly spaced wraps. Take your time. It's not a race. Try to make it look good. I was kind of shocked that I got them as even as I did here. So I'm going to get that bobbin off the cradle and then shorten up that thread. It's much easier when you got a nice short thread there. And just lock that Madeira in place. A few wraps around the back, and then I put a couple in the front. And I'm kind of tying down and building up a little bit of a thorax here, right back to that third rib there. I'm going to trim off the tag end. Oh, there's a little bit extra. Let's get that out of the way. Okay. And then we're going to just build up the thorax a little bit more, like defining the area that's going to be the thorax rather than build it up. So we've kind of defined that area, and we're going to grab some more of this pheasant tail and quite a few fibers. I'm just going to pull them right off because this is going to be our wing case. So you see, I try to keep them together as much as possible, and we're going to tie them in by the tips. Not too close to the tips because the tips can be brittle. So I've gone back a little bit away from the tips, and we're going to lock it in there right at the beginning of that thorax area. And we'll just trim out the butt ends of the pheasant tail. Very nice. And we're going to just, wrap over the butt ends a little bit, try to smooth them out. Again, trying to keep that space behind that hook eye. That's crucial because it's easy to crowd. And we're tying in quite a bit of material here. So we're going to get the Ringneck rump patch and just grabbing one of these feathers off the patch. And the tips are what we're concerned with here. So I'm going right up to the very tip of this feather and preening back all the longer ends. And we're going to tie it in by that tip right there that we've made a little bit of space. A few nice tight wraps you want to make. You want to make sure that it's locked into place. I swept back the other fibers to get them out of the way. It looks about right. So we'll trim off this little front end of the feather, and again you can see it's getting close to the hook eye, so we'll try to smooth it out again and then go back a little bit. We want to leave that space behind the hook eye to build up the thorax. And to build up this thorax, we're using some of this Kaufman's golden stone and brown dubbing. This is an older dubbing that I have. So if you can't find it, don't go crazy. It's just a nice brown old school dubbing. And put on a decent sized noodle and get that started. And that's probably enough. Like I said, we want to leave some space there behind the hook eye because we're about to tie in this feather. You want to pull this feather forward, and now I'm turning it to the side so you can get a look at, I'm preening back these fibers on this feather because these are going to be like the wings emerging for the wet fly. And it gets a little sloppy here. And this is probably the hardest part about it. So I'm shortening up my thread and pinching it down and really trying to lock this feather into place. I want to make sure that it's oriented properly, making sure it's straight and it's looking good. And then I lock it down with a few more nice tight wraps. And it looks like it's locked into place. So I'm going to trim it off. And you can see the little bit of the tag end sticking out of there. And I'm going to sweep back these fibers again. Just try to lock it in a little more. Preen them out. And we're going to pull this wing case forward. And that's also going to help separate these fibers and lock them down. So we're going to pull forward this wing case, separating those fibers and trying to align it as straight as possible. You can cheat a little bit and pull it towards yourself like that because your wrap is going to pull it away from you. So a couple of wraps just to make sure I get it locked in. Hold it tight and sweep back those fibers again to really secure this pheasant tail wing case. I'll put a wrap or two in front, and then we can trim off those butt ends, get them out of the way. And they're sticking up a little bit too much. I try to trim off a little bit more, and I'll give them some wraps to cover them up, but I don't want to crowd that hook eye. That's the one thing. It's hard, again, with all this material that we're tying in, to not crowd that hook eye. So I'm making sure the hook eye is clear. Put my nail behind it so I can make sure I can see through it. And it's looking pretty good. So we're going to grab that whip finish tool and we're going to finish it off right there with 5 nice wraps over that thread head that we've built up. Once we get that tied up, we'll trim it out. And you can see we've got some crazy looking fibers and stuff there. So we're going to have to clean the fly up a little bit before we finish it. And when we finish it, we'll finish it with a little bit of UV resin. But like I said, there's a few little crazy little fibers from the dubbing. And we also want to just straighten out those little emerging wings or stud legs, whatever you want to call them. I never know, with the length of them. This is more like a wing than a stud leg. Stud legs are short, they're stubby, studs. So I'm using the bodkin to preen out these little emergent wing fibers, but that just makes more of a mess. So I'm going to use my fingers, just preen them a little bit, make them look good, make sure they're as even as I can get. They look good. The profile is really looking nice, extremely buggy. Looks good. They look good. They don't have to be perfect, I like it. So I'm going to grab a little bit of this thin UV resin. We'll put a dollop right on the top, make a nice covering for that wing case and lead it down into the body of the fly. Then I'll get my UV torch ready, fire that bad boy up, and we'll cure the resin. And I sped it up here a little bit, but whenever I'm curing the resin, I like to take my time. I make sure that I really hit it for more than the suggested amount of time, just to make sure that it's on there and it's hardened. There's been plenty of times I thought I had it, and once I kind of knocked it with my finger, the whole thing fell off. So make sure you cured it properly. Give it that once over. Spin it around a couple times. Dubbing looks good, nicely wild. The tail is preened. Those wild wings look good. They do. Even on the bottom, that weird little piece, it fits. The Pérez Destroyer. Again, I just couldn't pass it up. I had to tie this for y'all. So I hope you enjoyed the tie. And until the next one, stay fly.